Regan.
Thank you for joining me today on Connecticut Valley Views. My guests are from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, and they are Alyssa Gordon, and she is the Vice President of Community Impact, and Jay Williams, who is the President of the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. It's a pleasure to have you both on.
Thank you for having us.
We're going to have a very enlightening conversation, I think. Alyssa and Jay, give me some background on your career, how you came to join the foundation. People will be interested in that.
Sure. I go first. So my background is a combination of both corporate philanthropy was in the earliest part of my career, working for actually an insurance company's foundation that was focused on HIV and AIDS grant making. And then I moved to work in a nonprofit, and from there I worked for the Chief Justice in New York State doing public policy.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh.
And court improvement work and programming related to young people who are involved in the child welfare and juvenile justice system. Moved to Connecticut and spent several years at the Connecticut State Office of the Child Advocate, continuing work around supporting young people who are involved in state-supported services, child welfare, juvenile justice again, and then had an opportunity to come join the foundation.
So how long have you been with it?
I've been with the foundation a bit over 6 years.
Wow, and you're very broad base, so you've got a lot of experience to draw on. Jay?
I've been with the foundation for almost 4 years. Prior to coming to the foundation, I was in Washington, D.C. for six years. I served 6 years in the Obama administration. I served for 3 years as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development, where I headed up the Economic Development Administration. I served for a couple of years as the Auto Recovery Czar during the restructuring of GM and Chrysler. And I spent 1 year in the White House doing intergovernmental affairs. Prior to my service in Washington, D.C., I was from Youngstown, Ohio.
Okay.
I was in my second term as mayor of Youngstown, Ohio, before I resigned to join the administration. And the early part of my career, prior to working in community development, before running for mayor, I was in banking. So I started off my career in banking.
So that's the financial background.
The financial background, from teller to vice president of mortgage lending. So it's given me a diverse corporate background before I went into public service.
And what was the move to Connecticut, the impetus, the offer?
The offer to work here at the foundation. So
Okay.
when the administration ended, my wife and I and our son were contemplating. We thought about going back to Ohio. I thought about running for office again back in Ohio. But the board of directors was going through a CEO search, and the executive recruiter reached out to me, and we had a conversation. And after a series of interviews, I was fortunate to be offered the position here, and thought it was just a perfect place to bring my experiences of being an elected official, having served in the administration, and then even
And so
some
you
of the
had some
corporate.
political background.
Absolutely.
So you two are a great combination.
We're a great fit. Yeah, we work together very well.
team.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, I think it's very important that people know that you're vested in the area, and that's why I ask you and what brought you here and how it works, because if you're not vested in it, people can't trust you. All right. Jay, if you could explain the vision and the mission, the overall, and that encompasses a lot of things, strategic focus and structure and so forth. Give us a general sense of how this place operates.
Absolutely. Well, the Hartford Foundation is a community foundation, which is different than a corporate foundation or a private family foundation. We are geographically based. We are coming up on our 100th year anniversary. We were founded in 1925 with an investment that was probably between $9,000 and $11,000 it's amazing. Over those 96 years, that investment and other investments have grown to over a $1 billion endowment. So it's really given us a position through the generosity of our donors to be well positioned to work in this community. We serve 29 towns in the greater Hartford region, and I can tell you that we have evolved tremendously over those almost 100 years. And our mission, which is putting philanthropy into action, creating lasting solutions that result in vibrant communities across the greater Hartford region, is where we're centered, but our strategic focus has really sharpened over the last 3 or 4 years. And I can tell you that when I started, the board was interested in the foundation evolving to lean into its work in more impactful ways, to be more relevant as it related to our relationship with the community. So it has been a journey, and most particularly over the past 18 months, and really with Alyssa's leadership, we have engaged in a series of learnings with data, conversations with stakeholders that have taken our mission, which remains our bedrock, but really a strategic focus on dismantling structural racism and increasing social and economic mobility through grant making, capacity building, through public policy, through our convening, and it's really set us in a position to focus on some key outcome areas that Alyssa could talk about, but it's really been quite a journey over the past 18 months.
Well, yeah, and that's all a pretty heavy lift. 29 towns out of 169 in Connecticut, but still you're focusing where you need to be.
Right.
Obviously, that's been identified. Now, we have the COVID-19 thing that's occurred, and a lot of people are working remotely, but under normal circumstances, how many people are involved in the foundation, working for it? Do you have any, I guess, volunteers? Is there such a thing as a volunteer?
We do have volunteers. So
Okay.
Staff-wise, we're at just under 60. We recently hired about 5 or 6 employees, which was a wonderful addition because we were understaffed as we went through COVID, but the staff that we had just did an exceptional job. So we're excited about the 5 or 6 folks who have joined the Hartford Foundation family. So 60 people. There are numerous volunteers, and when I say volunteers,
And
more
what
so,
kinds of volunteer work do they do?
so they're less about volunteering per se with the foundation, but more so volunteers out in the community with the
Okay.
nonprofits that we work with. We do have donors who are on different advisory committees. So
Okay.
they volunteer their time on some of our advisory committees,
see.
whether it's the investment committee, whether it's our impact investing committee, our donor advised fund committees, Latino Endowment Fund. So they are volunteers in the sense they're not paid, but they're also donors. So it really gives us an opportunity to interact and engage with the community in ways that are meaningful, that help keep us, when I say keep us honest, keep us connected.
Yes.
Through the diversity of experiences and perspectives that are a part of this community.
Yeah. So if you were to describe departments, I mean, you've got a legal department, I assume, and so forth, so human resources. I mean, tell us what comprises that. Either one of you, please respond. Yeah.
We actually don't have a legal department.
Okay,
We have
okay.
many reformed lawyers
All right.
on staff, but not a legal
Okay.
department.
All right.
We have our community impact department, which is the staff that's working on together in partnership, because as Jay mentioned, nothing we do is
Okay.
alone.
Okay.
Everything is dependent on partnerships,
Okay.
whether it's partnership with nonprofits, partnership, listening and learning from residents, community leaders, policymakers, other community foundations in the state and nationally. So the Community Impact Department, it has responsibility for listening and learning from all those
Sure.
different partners to take dollars and bring it out to the community
Yes.
for community benefit.
Yes.
We have our development team that is kind of the other side of that coin, which
Okay.
is working in partnership with donors and others to bring dollars in that then go out to benefit the community.
Right.
We have our finance and administration department that makes everything run behind the scenes, and we have our communications and marketing department that shares all the stories and all the information about what we're doing and learning.
So taking that information and somewhat coming back to Jay or either one of you, where is the greatest revenue coming from? Is it major donations, any other foundations that donate to your foundation? And then the concentration of where those dollars mostly go, let's say during an average year. Are they going to feed people or whatever the motive may
So
be?
the dollars coming in,
Yes.
and Alyssa is overseeing the grant making. The dollars come in from 2 primary sources. Our donors,
Yes.
and we receive between 12 and $14 million in donations each year from donors.
Okay.
And then the other primary source of revenue is the revenue generated by the endowment. When I talked about
Yes.
the $1 billion of the
Yes.
endowment,
Yes.
that generates roughly $50 million plus or minus for us to do operations and the grant making. So that's the money coming in from those 2 primary sources. And then the money going out, which is a part of what Alyssa oversees, and in addition to other things.
Yes.
We put out between $40 and $50 million in grants each year through, again, the dollars that we get in from our donors and the dollars that are
Yes.
generated from the
Yes.
endowment.
So those grants, where are they concentrated? I guess that's why, what are the projects that seem to be the most needy?
Sure. So one of the things that Jay mentioned when we established our strategic framework and,
Yes.
and thought about the priorities, recognizing that as a community foundation, we need to serve the broad range of communities and needs in the community. We really took a look at all the information that we had available to us, whether it was pure data and
Yes.
research
Yes.
and conversations
Yes.
with a broad range of community stakeholders to understand where the greatest needs were. And one of the things that we absolutely heard over and over again and learned from the data is the great disparity in opportunity, depending
Okay.
on
Job
your race,
opportunity.
any kind of opportunity
Okay.
in terms of living in a
Housing.
safe,
Okay.
affordable, high quality housing and neighborhood.
Okay.
Opportunities to be on a path from early childhood all the way through post-secondary opportunity to achieve a sustainable living wage, to having opportunity to access to parks and arts and culture was different depending on where you lived, what your zip code was, your race and ethnicity, the amount of your income, and certainly particularly around your race and ethnicity was a significant factor in how available some of the opportunities or how many barriers may be there. And so we really took a look across a range of needs from basic human needs, starting just there, to arts and culture and opportunities to engage civically, and said, where can our dollars make the most difference to address those disparities, to maybe dismantle or break down, in partnership with others, some of those barriers to opportunity.
Okay, so let me ask you a little bit more about that. Do you have, I guess, number one, of measurement? Because we are doing this interview because we want the public to know more about it, and you may find some more donors. I mean, they need to know that there's an investment here. How do you measure the improvement you've made? Because particularly during the COVID-19 thing, that must have just put twice as much weight on your shoulders, and to respond to that, because that's an entirely different variable than the normal everyday things. So how do you measure it? Do you actually you monitor it as you go along? This was our motive, this was our plan, and we found that we've gotten this much success in a certain amount of time.
Yep. So absolutely. I mean, we have grown over the last couple of years. We've grown a research and evaluation staff and component to our work, and really have been engaging in even deeper conversation with our nonprofit partners who are out there actually doing the work.
Yes, yeah.
To talk with them about what are the things that can help us understand our contributions with our dollars.
Yes.
To certain outcomes that we may be looking for. So, for example, how might we understand what the steps are to ensuring that somebody has a particular population of people in a neighborhood have greater access to food security?
Okay.
So what are the things we need to know? And learning from the nonprofits, what is the information that they can gather?
Yes.
And helping to provide other resources to make sure they have the technology, the staffing capacity to be able to collect that data, analyze that data, learn that from that data, and share it with us, so we can understand best practices and be informed for the next round of grants we're making. So each kind of grant and each kind of category of grants, whether it's basic human needs, whether it's looking at a high quality affordable housing supports, have a different set of metrics or outcome measures that we might be looking at over time, but it's developed together with the nonprofits.
Okay, and how would it work if someone comes to you and say, we'd like a grant? This is what we've been doing. We were hoping to accomplish this. We don't have enough money. The donors have not been contributing. What's the process that happens? They come to you, they contact you, and they go, hi, this is what we do. Can you help us out? What's the process for that?
So there's a few ways to connect with the foundation. So with our strategic priorities framework, we have 5 what we're calling outcome areas that seeking to contribute to. One is around high opportunity neighborhoods, and that really is focused on increased investment in Hartford neighborhoods, but also increased investment to ensure affordable, high quality housing in the region.
Yes.
Secondly, we have our employment opportunities outcome area, which is very much focused on that pathway.
Yes.
From, even early childhood, but certainly middle school forward.
Sure.
To have folks on a path towards sustainable wage employment. We have our arts and culture, which is particularly focused on looking at increasing opportunities for artists of color in the region. We have our civic and resident engagement, which I think mainly has been focused on our get out the vote. Accessibility and census count, but also includes residents being civically educated.
Yes.
And we have our basic human needs area, which is everything from diversion and prevention,
Yes.
from homelessness, food security, internet, equitable internet access. So one way of connecting with the foundation is we either put out requests for proposals from each one of those areas,
Sure.
and that's on our website, right? An RFP or a letter of interest request, and that's on our website. We post that on our website. We actually now have a mechanism that somebody can sign up and get notifications whenever there's a new RFP that goes out or a new opportunity that goes out.
Right.
So that's one way. Through one of one or more of those outcome areas, we may seek. We also may sometimes, because we've been around for a really long time, we may invite a group of nonprofits or residents to come talk to us about a project.
Sure.
We've in the past,
And they could have a lot of common denominators.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
So that's kind of one way through this RFP or
Right,
invitation. Two ways: RFP or an invitation process connected to our outcome areas, or more broadly to if there's activities to look at addressing structural racism.
Sure.
Then in the past year, we just opened up, for example, 2 new opportunities that folks can connect. One is called our Access Grant opportunity, and that's also on our website.
Okay.
And what that is a more open opportunity because we don't know what we don't know, and we want to hear, what ideas, what activities, what strategies do folks have across the region to help us think about contributing to dismantling structural racism, creating more equitable opportunity. So with that Access Grant, there's a pretty easy application, and this year, with the first year, we're opening it up, and there will be kind of 2 rounds. It will be a rolling open application, but we'll make decisions and grants over twice this year. So that's open currently. That's another opportunity. And the other opportunity we opened up also through our website is where you can find more information, but for the faith-based community.
Okay.
And so we recognize more than ever, I think, after this past number of months, after the past year of COVID, how critical the faith-based communities and organizations have been in providing, being kind of the trusted providers of basic human needs and organizing and resiliency for neighborhoods and communities. And so we developed a special grant opportunity for faith-based organizations to come in and talk to us about what they're doing related to basic human needs, bringing residents together. And so that's a current open opportunity.
Okay, so if you were to choose what you see as the greatest, and we're talking about the Hartford Capital Region, and you serve 29 towns, would you say that education is the biggest part of the pie? Would you say the basic human needs is the biggest part? Now, I know that it can change and fluctuate, particularly during COVID-19. Where do you see that you can get, I guess, and it's a financial question too, where you can get the biggest bang for the buck, as it were, or make the most headway? That's important to know too, because the people that are going to try this access thing are going to say, gee, that fits right into what we're trying to do, that's good. What would you say? Is it education? Is it basic human needs? What do you see as the biggest need?
Yeah, I think what we've found is our basic human needs, that category, it undergirds everything else.
I see. You need to eat.
Right, if you don't have
live.
those things,
Yes.
the other things really don't matter, or they matter so much less.
Yes.
Food insecurity, housing stability, making sure that you have access to basic health care, safety.
Yeah.
And that is more pronounced when you're talking about families with children.
Sure, of course.
So, individuals who are single, still need to be taken care of, but when you bring children into the equation, the higher degree of vulnerability ability that all children have, just by the nature of the fact that they're children, requires a focus on that. So that's both where, as Alyssa talked about, that thread runs through all of the other outcomes, the housing opportunities, the employments, the high opportunity neighborhoods, arts and culture, and civic and resident engagement. And I just wanted to underscore what was talked about a few minutes ago about the importance of evaluating and measuring and learning.
Yes.
Our donors, when they give us resources, they have an expectation that those resources will be put to good use.
Yeah.
They don't expect perfection, but they do expect us to do the due diligence and the resource necessary and be accountable for that, as does our board and our stakeholders. So that's where there has been a significant investment, and Alyssa has led this for a long time, of establishing that learning and evaluation and that research component. So we also don't do it just for ourselves. We share that information with the community writ large, and with our stakeholders, because at the end of the day, we want people to continue to have trust and confidence that when they're making a donation or investment into the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, that we are doing our absolute best to ensure that those dollars are being impactfully and efficiently and effectively put out into the community.
When we talk about the 29 towns, could you give me a sense of the number of people that you have helped, or the number of people, I guess, or number of families? Could you give me a sense of what that community comprises? When we talk about you're helping 29 towns, and all those towns have different, populations and so forth. Is there a sense of?
Well, I mean, the 29 towns comprise probably, they exceed 250,000 in terms of population.
Okay.
And each of those towns is unique and has unique needs. Some of the towns are much more affluent, and others of the towns have certainly pronounced economic struggles. And as Alyssa referred to, our relationship are with the towns, but really with the nonprofit organizations that are either based in those towns or serve those towns. So there are hundreds of nonprofit organizations that we work with on an annual basis, and collectively, they're serving tens of thousands of individuals. And it really just when we are talking about some of our towns out in Andover and Marlborough and Hebron, there are Glastonbury and Simsbury and Suffield. There are organizations that have been out there for decades that know and understand the intimate nuances of those towns, where there may be a need.
Oh, that's critical.
Where there may be a need to shore up a food pantry, where there is a desire to have more open space. So that's where our relationship with those organizations based and rooted in serving those communities is so important, because we don't pretend to sit here in our offices and know exactly what's best.
No, you got to talk to the salesman on the street to know what you should be doing.
Right, but we also have made it a point to ensure that we're not just cocooned in our offices.
Yeah, of course.
That the staff, all of us, are out in those communities because we live there, but also more importantly because we are serving them. So I think that's where the numbers of individuals or families or organizations that are served are one component of how we evaluate. But I think equally, if not more important, is have we moved the needle? Has hunger been reduced in a certain segment? Has educational attainment been improved? Have access to resources for small businesses been made more available as a result of our relationship and the partnerships that we have out there?
Our time's going by quickly, but I want to make sure we get a couple of things. Just very, very briefly, there were a couple of articles that were in the Connecticut Mirror recently, and one in particular, April 26, Making Hartford Home, the push for equitable home ownership. That's give us just a quick thing, because then we've got a couple of really important questions.
Sure. That is an example of one of those requests for proposal that we put out. We put out a request for ideas about how to engage, educate, and organize residents to learn about issues related to housing segregation, which is definitely one of the barriers in our region, in our country, to affordable, high-quality housing, and also to think about, to learn about issues of inclusive housing. And so we received proposals from Hartford to Glastonbury of residents coming together with nonprofits, thinking about how they wanted to organize and educate their fellow residents.
So here's what's important. You've got something brand new that you've initiated. This is a cohort of community foundations that you just mentioned, but a new action fund for racial justice that launches in June, and then I want to be able to give you a website, and we've just got a couple of minutes, so let's...
Sure. So the Action Fund for Racial Justice, we're excited about its launch. It is another opportunity for donors to be generous in terms of those outcomes and how we can move the needle. We both hope it serves as a source of inspiration, but we're also inspired by our donors. So that is a fund that is really, I think, another arrow in our quiver with respect to moving the needle on that dismantling of structural racism and the increasing of social and economic mobility, specifically in those communities of color where we've seen those disparities and inequities so detrimentally plaguing.
So what do you see as that key to unlock that? How does that message, how do you pose that message to create that, so that you don't have the disparity there anymore? How do you, who do you talk to, and how do you do it?
We are better off as a society, we are better off as communities if there is greater equity and opportunity.
Okay.
There is a
I
case
agree.
to
I
be
agree
made,
with that,
right?
for
That
sure.
if you have greater equity and opportunity in Hartford, then that improves Glastonbury and Simsbury and Hebron and Marlborough and Andover. There is no argument that somehow improving those that have not had access, that have not had opportunity, that have not had a chance to exercise their own aspirations because of the structures of this country is going to be a detriment to those who have benefited. So.
Well, you've got a
part of our
lot
mission.
of things that are just wonderful, certainly very constructive. I think that our viewers are going to be thrilled to hear about it, and I want to be able to provide them with your website so that they can access all of those segments that you talked about. It's hfpg.org, and you can connect with them also on Facebook and Twitter, and the main phone number is 860-548-1888. So I do want to thank you very much for being with Connecticut Valley Views today, and to our viewers, thank you for joining us, and you can see all of our programs on ConnecticutValleyViews.com or check your local PA TV stations. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great to be
Pleasure.
here.